Good morning and welcome to Arise News Now. I'm Asha Tara in London. It's Tuesday, the 6th of August, and our top story this hour. Eastern Afghanistan and neighbouring Pakistan have been hit by torrential rain, causing floods, killing at least 80 people. Officials say 34 have died in the Sarobi district alone, around 65 kilometres east of the Afghan capital, Kabul. Pakistan's biggest city, Karachi, was also badly affected. At least 16 have died. The rain, which started at the weekend, turned into heavy downpour, inundating several areas of Pakistan's largest city. Forecasters have warned of more rain in Karachi and other parts of Pakistan. Paul Chapman reports.
This car was swept away by flash floods in the Pakistani city of Karachi. The man, woman and 18-month-old baby inside were killed. They're among more than 80 people across Pakistan who've lost their lives in floods caused by unusually heavy monsoon rain. Witnesses said they tried in vain to save the trio.
The car was sinking. We heard cries of, "Save us! Save my child!" We picked up sticks and gave them to hold on to, but the car sank into the garbage in the meantime. The man who was out of the car also drowned.
It's a similar story in Afghanistan. The monsoon floods killed more than 60 people here in Sarobi, less than an hour from Kabul. Hundreds of traditional mud brick homes have been washed away. People in remote villages have been left without shelter, food or power. The floods in both countries are being blamed for more than 160 deaths in total so far.
A powerful bomb in the southern Philippines has left at least 6 people dead and 28 injured. The region has been plagued by long-standing conflicts between government forces and Islamic rebels. So far, no group has claimed responsibility. Arise News' Sarah Hemranjani reports.
This is the scene in the southern Philippines after a powerful blast tore through Cotabato City. The explosion has left at least 6 people dead and 28 injured. The blast, which shattered glass and set fire to adjacent buildings, could be heard from miles away. The local police director says they are searching for a motive.
I think it might be considered as a personal attack, no, sa ating city administrator, na hindi lang natin ma-establish what is really the reason. Maaari din, it might be also, there are some other targets.
The bombing came moments after the US issued a global security alert that Al-Qaeda might be planning a terrorist attack. It's the second blast to hit the predominantly Muslim area in the past 2 months. Sarah Hemranjani, Arise News.
The boss of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, has agreed to buy the Washington Post newspaper for $250 million. Mr. Bezos is buying the paper and its other print properties in a personal capacity. The Post has been owned by the Graham family for more than 80 years. Deborah Gembara reports.
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos is buying the Washington Post. The $250 million surprise deal was announced on the newspaper's website. Also on the site was a letter from Bezos promising, quote, "no radical change." Bezos could be seen with Post CEO Donald Graham at the Sun Valley Conference this past July. Under the terms of the deal, the Post will remain separate from Amazon.com. The agreement comes at a bleak time for newspapers, which in the past few years have struggled to keep advertisers and their readership. It also comes on the heels of the Boston Globe being sold for $70 million.
Amateur video shows violent clashes at the Aleppo airport one day after Syrian President Bashar al-Assad tells an audience he can end the war in months. Mana Rabieh reports.
Amateur video from Syria released Monday purports to show a suicide attack at the airport near Aleppo. Reuters can't verify the images, but the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said a man blew himself up at the airport entrance and that violent clashes between rebels and government troops followed. Rebels have continued their assault against this strategically important government airbase. It's been used to launch strikes on rebels in Syria's embattled second city. In the capital, Damascus, but it could have been a world away, President Bashar al-Assad broke a Ramadan fast with the country's dignitaries, businessmen, clergy, and members of the arts community. He told his audience he can end the war in months.
If we succeeded in this popular war and there were a wider contribution in other areas, I would like to say that the solution will be in a matter of months. Syria will be able to end its crisis and beat terrorism.
But real hopes of peace talks appear dim. Assad has been defiant throughout the more than 2-year-long conflict, and UN diplomats say a peace conference is increasingly becoming unlikely.
Nidal Hassan, the army major accused of carrying out the worst non-combat attack on a US military base in history, will defend himself against charges that carry the possibility of the death penalty. Arise News' Daniel Henry reports.
It's been 4 years since the Fort Hood shootings that killed 13 soldiers, and the trial of the army officer accused of carrying out the attack is only just beginning. Major Nidal Hassan faces 13 counts of premeditated murder and 32 counts of attempted murder. While Hassan admitted earlier that he acted to protect Muslims and the Taliban in Afghanistan from US forces, the judge rejected his offer to plead guilty in exchange for being spared the death penalty. Hassan will act as his own attorney and is expected to call on 2 witnesses. He was injured during the rampage and will address the court from his wheelchair. Prosecutors will argue that the former military psychiatrist became radicalized and began searching terms such as jihad before the attack. Despite Hassan's previous admissions of guilt and dozens of witnesses, all 12 jurors must agree on a verdict. The rampage, which took place just days before Hassan was due to be deployed to Afghanistan, raised questions about the military's frequent deployments and warning signs about Hassan that his commanders may have ignored. Daniel Henry, Arise News.
Japan is commemorating the 68th anniversary of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. Around 50,000 people gathered in Hiroshima's Peace Park near the epicenter of the 1945 blast that killed up to 140,000. Arise News' Nikki Omer reports.
Hiroshima's peace bell marks the 68th year of the city's entry into history for the most horrific of reasons. Its residents observe a minute's silence at the exact time the atomic bomb fell in the closing days of World War II. By the end of 1945, an estimated 140,000, more than a third of the population, lost their lives. Many died in the blast, more afterwards from radiation exposure. 3 days later, the United States dropped a second atomic bomb on Nagasaki. 6 days after that, Japan surrendered. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, like many of his predecessors, spoke of Japan's duty to press for a world free of nuclear weapons.
We Japanese are history's sole victims of the nuclear attack. And we have a certain responsibility to bring about a world without nuclear weapons, and it's our duty to continue to remind the world of their inhumanity.
But his words were criticized by the mayor of Hiroshima, Kazumi Matsui, whose own father survived the bombing. This year's memorial comes at a time when Japan is pushing to sell its nuclear technology abroad, despite opposition. It also comes at a time when efforts to contain the aftermath of the Fukushima nuclear disaster after the 2011 earthquake and tsunami are not going well. The company which operates the plant says radioactive groundwater is rising beyond its control. Nikki Omer, Arise News.
A visit to the Opinel factory, which sells 3 million penknives every year, half of them outside of France, even has an entry in the catalogue of New York's Museum of Modern Art. Celine Cleary reports.
Pablo Picasso used it to carve his sculptures. The ultimate accessory of French-style rustic living, the Opinel knife, is made here in Chambéry in the French Alps. The design has changed very little since the 19th century, but the family-owned business has had to adapt to the times.
The original knife has evolved very little since 1890, but we've adapted to the fashion. We've come out with models in various colours. You have to live with the times, and Opinel does this well.
Whether it's mushroom knives, butter knives, or potato peelers, Opinel sells about 3.5 million blades a year, nearly half of those abroad. The company doesn't plan to outsource anytime soon, though. Production will remain 100% French to keep that little je ne sais quoi.
It's a part of the French heritage. It's a knife that's really very old, and I've heard of Opinel ever since I was a kid.
Let's just say that Opinel is a legend. I mean, who doesn't have an Opinel in their pocket?
Penknife enthusiasts gathered here in the company's museum can learn about its founder, Joseph Opinel, and all about the details of their pocket companion.
You always have it in your pocket for picnics, or as my son would say, to carve wood and make things out of it. It's fun.
It's good for everything, to cut wood, to cut sandwiches and all that.
With Asian sales on the horizon, Opinel hopes to stay a cut above the rest.
A new cartoon superhero who fights bad guys whilst disguised in a flowing black burqa has taken off in Pakistan. Richard Sargent has more.
A Pakistani primary school teacher turned superhero when she puts on her burqa. She fights against baddies, like those who decide to stop girls going to school. Haroon is the man and pop star behind the cartoon called Burqa Avenger. He says he'd already been working on the idea for 2 years when Malala, a teenage activist for girls' education, was propelled to world fame after she was targeted by the Taliban on her school bus.
We were working on the exact same story about a little girl who stands up to the bad guys who are trying to shut down her school. And I'd never heard of Malala before then, but it was like life was imitating art. Life was imitating what was on our screens, what we were developing. Burqa Avenger is an animated cartoon superhero, but she is a real-life superhero.
In Pakistan, more than half of girls don't go to school. So the story of this young heroine, armed only with books and pencils, resonates strongly.
I loved it. It's a great inspiration for other kids in Pakistan, and we really needed a superhero.
Critics ask how wise it is to show a burqa as a symbol of power, when for many it represents oppression. But the creators answer that the superhero only dons a costume when she chooses.
My grandmother is a Bhutan. She had a burqa. So back in the childhood, she was like away. We used to steal her burqa, and I used to act like Batman wearing that burqa. It's like, I'm Batman, look at me. We used to be black Batman all the time. So that was like one of the inspirations.
As well as championing girls' rights, the series is also a proudly Pakistani affair, as the first completely homegrown 3D cartoon.
A snake, which is believed to have escaped from a pet shop in Canada, has killed 2 children in the province of New Brunswick. In a statement, the police said they believed an African rock python had strangled the 2 boys aged 5 and 7 after escaping from its enclosure. The boys were staying overnight at a friend's apartment above the pet shop. Police have recovered the snake, which was later found by the store owner. Leading insurer Lloyd's of London has offered up to €1 million for information on a jewellery heist in Cannes last month. An estimated €90 million worth of gems were stolen from the Carlton Hotel on the 28th of July in one of the world's biggest ever jewellery thefts. Police are still searching for the armed robber who raided the luxury hotel during an exhibition. Lloyd's says the reward will be given to the first person who provides details with the help of the recovery of the goods. In sport, England have managed to retain the Ashes by drawing the 3rd test after rain ended Australia's final day at Old Trafford. The tourists were in commanding position, having removed Alistair Cook, Jonathan Trott and Kevin Peterson in pursuit of an unlikely target of 332. But recurring showers prevented any redemption of the contest, and the captains eventually shook hands on a draw. The results gives England an unsaleable lead with 2 tests to play in the 5-match series. Cook's team need to draw only one of remaining 2 tests to win the series. Don't forget you can contact us anytime online at arise.tv. Goodbye.